How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the movie Castle, and today, if I counted right, should be the movie Castle's 400th video, which is a crazy cool milestone. And whenever I hit a big number, I always try to make sure I review a good movie on that number. So today, we're talking about Evil Dead from 2013. This is the remake. Directed by Fede Alvarez, stars Jane Levy, Shiloh Fernandez, Taylor Pucci, Jessica Lucas, and Elizabeth Blackmore. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing any of those names. But also, this is from Ghost House Pictures, which is Sam Raimi's production company. And if we take a minute to look over the producer credits, we can see Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, the director and the star of the first movie, are here as producers. And then you get on the top, a new vision from the producers of the original classic. So, yeah, it's always great to have input up from the original creators into your remake. It seems to really help. Like Night of the Demons, the remake, Kevin S. Tenney was a producer on that one. It seems to really help to have the original team back together again and, you know, helping out the new team. And overall, this is one of the better horror movie remakes. I'm obviously still a bigger fan of the first one, but this one is the rare good horror movie remake. I mean, a lot of them are okay, but, you know, it's always just, the original was better, and I do still believe that, but here they had an idea, and that's one thing that most people don't get, is when you're doing a movie, you need an idea, but when you're doing a remake, you also need an idea, because, you know, why pick this thing up again if you don't have a new idea? And so many times the remakes are either too far from the first one or way too close to the point of why even remake it. But this one, there's enough loving callbacks to the first one, and it stays close enough to the plot, but they had a new idea, and that was, well, as a lot of people say, what if the Evil Dead was serious? Now, the first Evil Dead is a great cult classic movie, a great horror movie that you all should definitely watch if you haven't. But the thing is, it was definitely cheesy. Two main reasons for that. One is they had an ultra low budget, and in turn, they couldn't do everything they wanted to, and in turn, some of it came out cheesy because of that. But you're also talking about Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, two big Three Stooges fans, and they simply couldn't help themselves but making it quite a fun movie. But having this idea, you know, what if Sam Raimi wasn't limited by his budget and he could just nail all the effects and make it as big and gory as he wanted to? And what if we kept it super dark and super serious, you know? So you are missing the humor, but this is one of those movies that when the action gets rolling, you're like, oh man, all these characters are doomed. And it is pretty dark. The original movie had the tagline, the ultimate experience and grueling terror. And I really feel like this remake, they really clung on to that tagline. So, all that being said, let's jump into the plot. Now, I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers for the plot, but I do want to say my piece on a few plot points and make sure you guys have a basic understanding as to what the movie's about. So let's go ahead and dive in. This movie opens up a pretty famous opening scene. A girl is being tied up by her father. They don't name him, but he's probably Professor Nobi. She's tied up, and she's begging and saying, how can you do this, Dad? And it's not until there's absolutely no way out for her that she reveals she's a deadite and starts verbally attacking him. And he lights her on fire to save her soul. And then we cut to the present, and we get to meet our new group of characters. Now, these are different characters, but essentially occupying the same role. So they're not exactly the same characters. You know, your main lead is David and not Ash. I believe I heard a rumor, you know, Bruce Campbell, executive producer on this thing. From what I gathered, Bruce Campbell said, nobody can play Ash but me, so when they did the remake, they changed up all the characters a little bit. nobody has their original names, but granted the Bruce Campbell explanation, I totally get that. So David is your closest thing to Ash. He has his girlfriend and his sister, as well as his friend and his girlfriend. So the same arrangement of characters, but it's, you know, David instead of Ash and Mia instead of Cheryl, but it's still the same type of 5 characters, but different people and not necessarily trying to be the exact same thing. They're all gathered together for a different reason. The first one is just a vacation, but here you find out that Mia, the younger sister, is addicted to drugs, and you kind of see why. She's had a terrible life. She had to take care of her dying mother, why David was starting to establish his early career and couldn't attend to her as often, and she's been really under a lot of pressure, and they're taking her to this cabin to help her quit, you know, ditch all the drugs, live in isolation for a few days until she gets over the worst of it. And it also helps that the friend's girlfriend is in the medical field and understands the best way to go about this, understands the best way to deal with withdrawals, but she warns David she's going to want to return to the drugs, and she's going to do anything for that. She'll say anything, she'll do anything, she'll betray you because she's addicted and wants to get back to what she knows. So that's a pretty good setup for a horror movie, is the main character, who's obviously going to be the first to see things, is going to be immediately discredited because of that. And if it were any other situation other than a horror movie, it would just be her lying, you know? And if there weren't monsters, she probably would have lied anyway, you know? It's this dark, real-world thing, and it's definitely a neat add-on to this movie. Well, they go to the cabin, and it's their grandparents' cabin, but they find the door has been broken in. Someone broke into the cabin, they kicked the door, the lock piece flew off. And it doesn't look like it's in the best shape, and they're like, okay, what did they do here? And that's where they discover the basement from the prologue. They find the burnt pole in the basement, and they go, okay, someone did some evil, crazy witchcraft here. And on top of that, they find small sacrificed animals hanging from the ceiling, and they also find the Necronomicon. Too bad they didn't find a Hills Have Eyes poster. That would have been fun, but this is the series cut. Anyway, the friend is some kind of teacher, so he takes the Necronomicon up. It's wrapped in a plastic bag with barbed wire around it, so you can tell they were trying to keep people from messing with this, but he takes some barbed wire snips, opens it up, and you see the Necronomicon, which I don't think they actually name it in this version, but it's got human skin as a leather binding, but unfortunately, again, because we're the serious version, no screaming face on the front, which I did kind of miss. But one thing I really did like is, you know, the Necronomicon full of evil magic spells, but in this version, the past owners have scribbled all over the book warnings. You know, they can't destroy the book, but they're going to warn people. They're going to be like, you know, in pen, don't read this, don't say anything out loud, put this book back. And I really did like that you could see the effort of the previous owners to try to stop the new people, which of course they don't listen to. But they even scribbled over the do not say words. So they, in an effort to keep them from reading it out loud, scribbled over the words so you physically couldn't read it. Of course, the nerd teacher character is too smart for that and does a rubbing in order to see what was written there originally. And of course reads the rules out loud, kicking everything off. And the evil Deadites will come into the cabin, and that's where the craziness starts. And that's, I guess, let's talk about the Deadites first. And this is the serious movie, right? But one thing I do want to say is when they fight them, it keeps the kinetic over-the-top quality, you know. You think that this might be the more subtle version, but thankfully it's not. You know, it's serious, but when they fight, it's dang brutal. It keeps the energy from the first one, which is very important. You know, like you see a scene where a Deadite's stabbing someone, and it's got this really fast arm, stab, 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 and you see, oh dang, they're screwed, and overall, these Deadites really do come at you, and they really are terrifying, but they keep the energy from the first film, and also, thankfully, the gore of the first film. This is a very bloody, very gory movie, and the fight scenes between the humans and the Deadites are very, very tough and visceral, and several shots where you're like, ooh, that looks like it hurts, and I really did like that. It's one of those horror movies that when it gets going, you really feel that all the characters are in a very, very tight spot, and that is really, really cool. But yeah, they keep it, the base thing, the Deadites are still Deadites. Now, in the original, the Deadites had a ton of makeup. These are more seriously designed Deadites, but they still call back to the original, so it's not a ton of makeup, but they still do look like Deadites. But these maybe do look a little more like zombie Deadites, so it's not as over the top in that way, but they still did have the right feel. And in addition to that, there are several callbacks to the first that I really did appreciate. You know, when you throw out a good Easter egg, you know, nothing over the top, but when you throw out a good little loving Easter egg, it really shows the fans that, you know, you're caring about the source material. And right off the bat, you see the Delta. Sam Raimi has this Delta that's in all of his movies, and that's parked nearby the cabin, and it's all overgrown with plants. Really, just right off the bat, a good thing, you know. They have things like the necklace is back in this movie, the light bulb that fills up with blood is in this movie. You open up the Necronomicon, one of the illustrations is very similar to the poster of the first movie. It's all this stuff where, you know, as a fan, you're like, okay, I see that, and I really do like that callback. And that is really good to keep the references, and, you know, the plot's pretty similar. It's the tone that they change, and they do add a few other stuff to the plot, and, you know, they add a little bit more as to what the Deadites are trying to do without it being too overly complicated, you know. So sometimes they try to over-explain stuff, and they give the Deadites a little bit more of, okay, we're trying to do this, and it does work in this, you know, surprising final act, but it's not overly complicated either, you know. And I do really like just how close they stayed, but it didn't feel unnecessary. You know, you get some that really, their remakes feel unnecessary, like why bother with it, but having the idea of changing the tone, not straying too far, but just looking through the same story with a different lens, really did make it enough to look at it and go, hey, there's something new here, it's worth watching. And they didn't stray so far that it didn't even feel like the same thing, which a lot of other remakes do. It's close enough, but with such a different light and view. This really is, a lot of it feels like what Sam Raimi would have done if he had a lot more money. And overall, I feel like the best way to describe the differences between the two is the first one is more original, and in turn, because it, you know, laid out the groundwork for all the stuff that would be mimicked later, the first one is more memorable. The second one, though, a bigger budget, you're doing things a second time around, it's more well put together as far as, you know, effects and stuff like that. So the first one is more memorable, but the second one, you can see that this one had a bigger budget, and you really do feel the professionalism behind the making of it. Overall, like I said, I'm still a bigger fan of the first, but just, you know, wacky, crazy, dark, and energetic, and just very, like I said, the ultimate experience in grueling terror. It is a lot of what Remake should be, is how can we look at the new one through a different lens, you know? And that's really what this is, and I really did like this movie. Is still a bigger fan of the first one, but definitely worth watching. I'd say see the first one first, obviously, but a pretty solid movie, and I really do like that. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You're really helping the channel out. I'll put a relevant playlist on the bottom. If you want to see more, you can click there and see more. will probably be my remakes playlist if you want to see my opinion on some other remakes as well. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.